Welcome back to another episode of Walton Racing. Today, we're covering the installation of the independent rear suspension on our 65 Coupe. If you haven't already, go check out episode 2 as it reviews the front suspension install.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so before we start putting anything on the car, a few parts need to be modified. We're going to start with the spindles. You'll see me marking a line on the spindle here. This piece will need to be cut off. Now I know what some of you are thinking. I'm not really excited about hacking up brand new parts. Trust me, we felt the same way. But with a little bit of planning, the execution piece is not bad. So one other mod to the spindles is the hole here. This needs to be enlarged. We'll chase this with a 5/8 drill bit. Alright, on to cutting that ear.
Whoa, whoa. Disappointed!
Alright, all kidding aside, this wasn't too bad. I took my time drawing a straight line into the aluminum and worked my way down. Be sure to file down any rough edges you leave behind. You'll thank yourself later down the road when it's time for service. Next, Steve hit up the Clarkson drawer and got to work on removing these Mustang studs. We'll be installing new studs provided by Factory 5 next. To install these new studs, we decided to use an impact versus a ratchet, suggested by Factory 5. We needed to use a bigger impact, but noticed the washer was getting warped. Someone on the forum suggested stacking a bunch of washers together, covered in grease, so we tried this method, running the stud until it bottomed out. Once the hubs were put together, Tyler put in the bushings for the differential.
Oh, we're on though. You okay there?
So take the hammer.
Factory 5 calls for modification to the front differential mounting holes. So as instructed, we chase those holes with a 5/8 drill bit. Once that was done, we moved on to mounting the differential to the frame, and boy, what a job that was.
Alright, so here we are, an hour and a half later, and we finally got this thing installed. Hopefully never have to do that again.
Don't you say that. Don't you ever say that.
Okay, so next up is the control and adjustment arms. Before installing, we decided to grease the bushings now. You'll see that they're full when the grease starts coming out of the flutes. We started installing the lower control arms. What we weren't prepared for was what happened next.
This is half inch. What's happening? What is happening? The heat? I think it's coming from up there. Turn off the heat.
It turned out there was a ton of dust blasting out our furnace register. Any guesses on how it got there? Now that we've unsoiled ourselves, it's back to the control arms. Like others before us, we came across a lot of tabs that didn't line up. We read on the forums that someone suggested making a spreader with a piece of all thread or a bolt, and some nuts and washers. You'll see Tyler using this to spread the tabs on the toe arm to get it to fit on the spindle.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Next you'll see me installing the hub to the spindle. They're connected with 4 bolts, which already had Loctite applied. We then went to install the axles. We put the axle nut on, and with a few hits of a rubber mallet, they seated in place. Once the axles were slotted in the spindle, the arms could now be connected. The axle nut and the control arms were snug up. We'll torque these down later. Now on to installing the springs we set up in episode 2. I'll post a link up top here if you want to check out how those were built. We put a jack under the spindle so the mounting holes would line up for the shock. We then torqued that to 40 foot-pounds and the floor jack is removed. Next, we decided to fill up the differential. Some of these differentials come pre-filled with gear lubricant and friction modifier, so we started by adding a little gear lube first. We noticed fluid coming out after about a third of the bottle, so it looks like ours was pre-filled and just needed a top off. Finally, we're on to the braking system. The rear brakes didn't come with a paper manual, so we were able to find that on Willwood's website. First, we fitted the rotors to the hats like we did for the front suspension. Then we went on to center the calipers. Some of you might notice the separate emergency brakes are missing. We'll set those up in a later video. Once the calipers were set, everything was pulled off and the brackets were reinstalled with Loctite. And that's it for episode 3. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.